Hello, my name is Timosha. I like talking about history. Recently, I've been talking about American history, history of American presidents as well. I've talked about history of Iran, Persia, and also I've been, sometimes I delve into the history of the church. I actually plan on doing something more extensive on history of the Reformation because I took history of the church when I was in school. I loved it, and of course, I continue to study the Bible. Um, Now, apart from European history, no doubt, I've been discussing history of England as well. I because we America sort of has an English heritage, right? Because America started out as British colonies chartered by the British Crown, and then of course we got our independence in 1776. Interestingly, when I was in school, um, I I I did my thesis, where I first graduated. I got a degree in history. I have several degrees in history. I have one from Columbia University in New York. I also have one from a Nigerian university, University of Jos, and that place, that area, Jos, is actually is the site, the location of the oldest civilization in recorded civilization in sub-Saharan Africa. It's the Nok culture, right? The Nok culture is in that area, the Jos Plateau, where I went to school. And, Nok culture is about 3,500 years old. So I talk about my, um, well, I've written about my Yoruba history as well, Nigerian history. I'm Yoruba. I'm Nigerian origin. I'm an American citizen as well. This era of ICE raids, I have to put it out there as a you know as an alert, as a just a cautious, as a matter of caution. I am an American citizen, and I'm Nigerian. So I come from a very rich heritage of Yoruba people, so they have an ancient culture as well, and this is not uh, known in Western civilization that much, especially in America. And so, fortunately for me, I did a thesis. My thesis I wrote on the nexus of my Yoruba civilization, my Yoruba culture, and Christianity as well. Two things I like to study. And so I wrote on the impact of Christianity on my Yoruba people. And so that's something that I hope, one day I'll be able to publish as a book. So I did that. It's been, oh, how long? Talking about some 30 years ago that I wrote that. But something that I wanted to do today is just talk about the um, how Europe, right? Of course, I love to talk about Europe as well. How did Europe? I do a lot of European history. How did Europe come to be? Because if when we notice, Europe, of course, is a continent, but we notice that Europe is not. Um, it's not one geographically contiguous landmass, as we tend to know continents to be, large land masses that are, geographically contiguous, right, and separated, discrete, right, like Africa, the African continent, right. So because Europe actually connects with Asia, right? So how do we make that distinction? So one of the things that came to define Europe was actually religion. Religion. So the people who belonged to what was called Christendom, right? Christendom in this, area of Western, west of Asia, they eventually evolved and became Europe. This is an idea. This is something I got from a book I read when I was a kid in Nigeria. We had it in our library. It was in our, it was a, it was an excellent book for me at the time. It's called The Triumph of the West. I think written by a guy called a historian, British historian J.M. Roberts. J.M. Roberts. I think he's an Oxford grad. So, so the idea is that these nations, right, that came to be Europe, they adopted Christianity as their national religion, right, as their national religion. Very ages ago in the Dark Ages, And if you notice, actually, many nations in Western Europe, right, they have a cross, right? They have a cross on their flags, right? They have a cross on their flags. The Scandinavian countries, or what we call the Nordic countries, you notice is on Denmark's flag, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden. You'll notice a cross, and even on England, Great Britain's cross, right? You see, various superimpositions of crosses, right? Because England's flag is sort of like an incorporation. It's an amalgam of the English flag, the original English flag, or the said to be, is it the cross of Saint George? It was a white plain, has a white plain background with a red cross emblazoned in the middle, right? A red cross right across in the middle, central to it, right? You notice this as a flag of England when English soccer teams are out, right? When the English national team is playing. So that's the flag they normally use, and not the Union Jack that we're familiar with. The Union Jack sort of incorporates the flag of Scotland and, others, which also have crosses on them, but they're placed maybe in cross diagonal uh, manner, right? So in the Union Jack, if you look carefully, you'll see a cross at the center. That's in the British flag as well. So European nations, as a marker of uh, their identification as Christian nations, right? Christian nations. So something since the Dark Ages, right? So that's how they identified as Christendom, and Christendom came to be Europe, right? Those nations that call themselves nations of Christ, right? Christian nations. They came to be, Europe, which is rather interesting, right? Because today, most Europeans, if they're not atheists, they're agnostic, right? So religion, Christianity played a huge part on their history, on their civilization, on their evolution, right, of their politics. And so, yes, Europe has had theocratic states. Even in the medieval times, in the 16th century, Switzerland, the Confederacy of city-states in Switzerland, including Geneva, they had a theocratic government, right, led by John Calvin. The same thing with Zurich. They had Zwingli. So there were theocracies in the past, and prior to that, of course, their monarchies. They claimed that they were crowned by God through the mediation of the Pope. So I just gave it to you how Christendom, right? The nations that were part of what was called Christendom evolved and became Europe, right? They became Europe. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I will keep you posted. Thank you.